I know you grew up as a drummer,
Right.
at a young age. So like, I guess what was your view of worship, perhaps then, and then has it changed to how you experience worship now?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, because when you look at it, at the age that I was a young kid, and
How old were you when you started playing?
when I started playing for the church, I was like nine years old.
Yeah, okay.
And so, the thought process as a kid is, you don't, first of all, you don't get opportunities like that. Back in the day, you don't get opportunities like that. And, the kids weren't allowed on the platform. Kids weren't allowed to touch the instruments and things like that. But, we were in a transition of pastoral leadership. Our pastor, currently right now, he was coming in to take over for his father-in-law, which was our bishop, and so he was looking for fresh meat. He was like more of a person that was looking to utilize the young talent that we had, and so forth and so on. No one really knew I played the drums except a handful of people, and I guess he heard that I played. So he said, hey, on Tuesday night, he said, hey, I want you to come tomorrow night. We're gonna have rehearsal. I want you to come and be there. And so we did. I went and I came, and he put me on the drums after rehearsal, and everyone was hanging around, and everyone turned around and they were like, we didn't know he could play.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was an opportunity to play the drums, to do something that I loved. But my upbringing, the practical teaching that I received, I knew that if I was going to do anything, it had to be unto the Lord. I knew that at a young age, and that was my worship. That was taught to me. My parents taught that to me. Whatever you have to offer God, that's your worship. That's what you give to God. And so it was something that I knew, and I think that's what helped. That's what helped guide me through my through the years of ministry that I was able to be a part of ministry at a young age. And as I became a teenager, things just began to mature in me. And so I answered the call of God at 12. God had been dealing with me, and I had been writing music and things like that, but I was still a drummer. It was a process for me. And so as a drummer, I truly feel like it was like a David experience, where all my siblings, they had grown up, they had moved out, and I was in my room. And as a drummer, I would play the drums in my room. I would have pots and pans, and that was my worship. I would have church. And that's how I connected with God. Some people, they'll just, some people, their ministry is prayer, and they just pray, and they don't have music to accompany them. Excuse me. But for me, music was my ministry. That was how I ministered to God, and that's how that was where my relationship with God began. And I believe that worship is prayer in full operation, because it is you connecting with God in an intimate way, to where you're speaking to Him, yet He's speaking to you. Praise gets you in, but worship takes you to a place. It gets you to a place where you are with God, and God begins to impart, and God begins to do things with you, and then all of a sudden you start hearing the voice of God. God starts speaking to you. That's where a lot of my songs come from me sitting at the piano just praying and worshiping, and then boom, a song will come. In Control came that way. Most of you that are watching probably know my story. I was sitting at the piano on a Tuesday night right before service, and I was praying. I was just in a quiet moment with God, just praying, Lord, I love you. And playing, just singing, just humming a melody. And then all of a sudden the song came, and there it was. And then when God starts pouring things out on you in worship, sometimes you got to stop and listen. It doesn't mean that you're not praying, that you're not paying attention. It means that you're stopping to hear God speak to you. You hear what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we can talk so much to God. Oh God, I need you. Oh God, this. Oh God, that. That's not truly worship. That's just you talking to God in prayer. But when you start worshiping God and you start telling God the deepest parts of your heart, Lord, all I want to do is be in your presence. You know what I'm going through in my life, but I just want to be next to you. I just want to be. I know that if I can get close to you, that you can speak to me. And you start having these intimate moments. It's like being in a relationship with your spouse. You start opening up and being transparent with them in a way to where they can rebuttal and where they can speak to you, where you can share a moment of intimacy, and that intimacy brings forth something that's beautiful. and you get closer with that person that you love. That's the same way it is with God.
Yeah.
You know, He starts telling you, okay, I hear what you're saying. Now it's my turn to talk.
Right.
And then that's where you start. This is like a personal worship moment, right? Of course, we have intimate settings in a corporate setting, right? To where you're encouraged by the worship that's going on,
right.
but you're having your own
right.
experience, right? But this is an experience when you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. This is an experience where God is speaking to you, where He's imparting in you, and when He does that, there's things that are birthed inside of you that come out of you that you can't fake it. It's just a part of that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's something that God puts in you. So growing up, that was my experience, as a young kid, and it never changed. It only got better. You only grow. There's a song that says, I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. And that song basically is talking about how God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So you only get better and better and better and sweeter as the days go by. And that's how your relationship and your understanding of worship is. Of course, as it gets better, you start understanding more.
Yeah.
You start seeing more. God starts showing you more.
Yeah.
But that's the graduation. Yeah. That's the sweeter. That's right. The better. Because you start getting more. And so as a drummer, you just fall in love. For me, I was falling in love with God for who He was, not for what He was able to give me. And I gave that back to Him at a young age. I gave drums back to Him. And I believe with all my heart that God started giving me things that I never really wanted or asked for. I asked to be used of God. But I didn't know what that looked like.
Was there ever a time when you were a drummer where perhaps you felt the call, like maybe a song came to you, or that you were maybe hesitant because did you ever say, oh no, I'm just a drummer, I'm not going to step into that? Or did it take you some time to actually say, like, okay, God, like I'm gonna take this and whatever you want to do?
That's good. It's a good question, because it's a part of my personality to be like, whatever I'm able to do, I want to do it. I'm inspired that way. Yeah. Like if I can do it, I'll do it. And sometimes I get myself in trouble, and I'll say yes to things that I shouldn't be doing, right? Yeah. But when it came to songs and singing and I would hear it outside of my inner circle, which mm-hmm. was probably just me and God at that point, because no one knew that I wrote songs. No one knew that I liked to sing. Mm-hmm. No one knew none of that.
So you kept it to yourself for a little bit.
Right. Everyone said, you're just a drummer. Literally had someone tell me that. Yeah. Like, hey man, like what are you doing telling me this? You're just a drummer. Yeah. Why are you giving me this song? You're just a drummer. Yeah. And literally, I would hate to, I hate to admit it, but I heard that many times. Yeah. I heard that many times. But you have to know what you heard from God. You have to know that. You have to be confident in that. And I think let's look at it this way with mm-hmm. David. Mm-hmm. David, he was isolated, but his isolation wasn't for the sake of, on God's side. His family's side, they wanted him to die. Mm-hmm. If you read, David wrote some Psalms that kind of told his story, that told, how as the deer panted after the water brook, my soul has longed for you, because he was longing for something, but he wasn't getting it from his dad and his brothers and his family. He had to get it from God. He had to redirect what he was missing and give it to God and desire from God. Yeah. So a lot of times, I realized in reading about David, his isolation was a development process. It wasn't something to where God was putting him in a position to just isolate him from people, to damper and to keep his gifts from growing. But no, his gifts were cultivated in his isolation. And so when David was by himself, he got confidence in God because of what he saw develop in his isolation. His music developed in his isolation. He learned how to war not only physically, but in the spirit, in isolation. Mm-hmm. He learned God was teaching him how to lead and how to protect while he was protecting and leading those sheep. So he had a process of where he was just getting learning and growing. And that's literally what I did. We had a 5-bedroom home, and all of my siblings had moved out, and I'm literally in my room. I got my own room at this point.
Yeah.
I'm the baby of the family. Before, I had to share a room with my brothers. I hated it. Every night I would sleep in somebody else's room. I would sleep either in my brother's room or my sister's room. And we had this 5th room, but it wasn't. It was a patio that we turned into a room, and I was too scared to sleep in there by myself anyway. So I was like, nah, I'm good. So as a young kid, as my siblings got older and they left, I would lock my door and I would isolate myself, and I would read, I would write, I would play. I had a keyboard. I didn't know what I was doing, but I would record. I had this little recorder, and I would put tapes in there. And for those of you that know anything about tape sets, there was these 2 buttons. You had a play button, you had a record button. Press those 2 buttons down, and you could record.
Yeah.
And so I would record, man. I would write songs. I had this journal, and I would save my money, and I would go and buy journals, and I would just write. And those were my moments of isolation where God was cultivating something. He was growing something. He was doing something in me. And so, to answer your question, when it came to outside voices, nah, you're not supposed to do this. You're just a drummer. I had to go back to what I felt and I heard and I knew. It's like, no, man, like I know that this was real. I know what I felt in that time when I was with God was real. There's times where I'll be playing and I'll be singing and the presence of God is coming in the room. I'm 12, 11 years old, and the Spirit of God comes in. I'm crying, I'm weeping. My mom's like, hey, what's going on in there, son? You okay? I'm good, Mom. I'm praying. And the more that happened, the more my mom she didn't bother me. She knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was just a desire. It was me going after the heart of God. And I believe that's why God called David a man after his own heart, because he went after God's heart. He went after his heart. He was after God's heart. He was looking to find God. How can I get your presence here? How can I get to where you are, and how can I get you where I am? I just want to be in your presence. And so at a young age, that's I believe that's what helped me grow as a musician. I wouldn't just say as a drummer, because as a drummer, that kind of grew into me, just taking opportunities that came. I never had any singing lessons, no piano lessons. I did have, our music director at the time. He did show me a few things, and I was able to take what he showed me by the grace of God, and I was able to utilize what I had, but for the most part, these were opportunities that came up. I played the drums because, first of all, I had a heart to do. I wanted to do that, but it was because we needed another drummer, and we had a drummer that was going into other part of ministry. And then when I became the music director, I hadn't played one song in my life on the piano, and it came to the point to where Wednesday night I got a call. Hey, you're the music director now. I need you to learn 3 songs for Sunday. And so all of the moments that I stepped into something is because the opportunity was there, and I just said yes, okay. And so God gave, because I allowed myself to be available. And that only was birthed in those worship moments, in that time of prayer, in that time of isolation. And so when those voices did come, and they came, the enemy would tell me, you're not a piano player. You're not a worship leader. You're not a singer. You're not a this. You're not a that. And I wasn't, but I was available. Is what I was. And I believe that God helped me, and He's continuing to help me, because I still don't know what I'm doing. But God is helping me every step of the way to grow in whatever aspect I am growing in. And so.
I look tired.